So a few days ago, Mark Zuckerberg made a huge announcement that is going to change Facebook and Instagram significantly, and it's likely to have a big impact on Meta advertisers. Now, I've spent more than $100 million on Meta ads over the past 11 years. I've built a specialized ad agency in this space, and in this video, I'm going to share what I expect will happen as a result of this announcement and the changes that are going to take place and the impact that that will have on Facebook ads and Instagram ads. Okay, so let's start by just quickly covering the main points within Mark Zuckerberg's announcement, because this is a really big deal for Meta, for obviously the apps of Facebook, Instagram, anyone that uses those platforms for business purposes, social media in general. This is a really big deal. So the main gist of what he said is that they are going to, as he termed it, get back to their roots and focus on free expression on the platform. And what he's referring to specifically is opening up the content that can be posted on Facebook, Instagram, etc., and reducing some of the restrictions and changing their content moderation systems. So for a number of years, Meta's had quite strict content moderation systems in comparison to other platforms like X, and he specifically referenced X, and that has prevented people from sharing content, posting things about all sorts of things. And they're going to move away from that, and they're going to instead have a much more open system. They're going to be getting rid of fact checkers, and instead having a community notes, I think he called it, system where people can report stuff that might violate content policies. They're doing a whole number of things that are basically along those lines, trying to allow people to post more of what they want on the platform. He also talked about changing how certain content ranks. So previously, any political content would be downranked and people were less likely to see it. Now they're going to change the algorithm so that content is promoted to people just in the same way that any other pieces of content would be. So it represents quite a big shift in terms of how the content is approached on the platform. And that leaves everyone in our industry thinking, okay, what impact is this going to have on the platform and therefore on Meta advertisers, on people who are in my audience that run Facebook ads, Instagram ads, and rely on that to generate leads, clients, sales, and things like that for their business, okay? So first, I think we need to have a quick look at and think about why are Meta actually doing this? Like, what's the motivation behind this move? So there's a few potential options. Could be to please a new administration coming in the US. That obviously happens very soon. And Meta might be thinking, okay, there might be a bit of backlash here. There might be some government intervention to force us to move in this direction to open things up, as has been done on X since Elon Musk bought it. Therefore, let's get ahead of this and let's say we're going to do it anyway. Let's sort of appease an administration that might not look on us very favorably. So that might be a big part of it. He, in his announcement, he even talks about the fact that the recent election shows as a societal desire for more open media sources and things like that. So he sort of gives a nod to that. If that is the case, I think that's smart. And as a Meta advertiser myself, someone whose business relies on these platforms, I would rather that Meta worked with a new administration, got ahead of it, got on their good side, as opposed to potentially being hurt by regulations and being forced to do things. So if that's part of the motivation, I think that's smart, and that's likely to provide a more stable platform going forward for people like me and businesses that rely on Meta ads as well. We don't want a government bringing a hammer down and messing things up, right? I think that's part of it. I think part of the motivation is also probably a bit of a personality shift from Mark himself. He has a lot of control at Meta, more than most people in his position would have, even at the large tech companies, even founder-led. Like, he has a share structure where he has voting power to basically decide what the company does. So he can exercise his will and make changes according to what he thinks is best. And I've listened to a number of interviews, watched a number of interviews with him recently, and he does seem to have changed as a person to some extent. That is to be expected. He started Meta when he was a child, basically. Facebook then, and it became Meta. And when he was a child, he's had a lot of learning, changing, growing up to do. He's been attacked by governments and a huge amount of press over the last couple of decades. I don't think it should be very surprising at all that his personality may well have shifted. Recently, we've seen he's changed in terms of how he presents his persona publicly. He's been into jiu-jitsu and MMA, and he's dressing differently. He's wearing really expensive watches, and he seems to some extent a different person. He's a father now, kids growing up. People change, right? From what I've seen of what he has said, part of this is just a personality shift in that he thinks this is now more important. One of the things that I'm getting from him is that he's potentially more willing to push back and fight against external sources, whereas previous years, Meta came under some criticism, involved in elections or anything like that, and he would sort of then seek to address it. Couldn't keep everyone happy, of course not. Like, that's absolutely impossible with the position that he's in. But he would try and do that. I think maybe he's going to do less of that. So he probably knows that with this change, they're going to come in for a lot of criticism from a lot of media sources. And I think as a person, he's now like, bring it on, I don't care. That's what it seems to be. Might be wrong, but that's what it seems to me. We also have to acknowledge, and Mark makes this very clear in his announcement, that part of their motivation for doing this was that their previous content moderation system was not very good at all. Posts were mistakenly taken down all the time. And not only were they taken down mistakenly all the time, perhaps they used a certain word, but it's not in the context of it being anything bad, and therefore it got that post taken down incorrectly because the algorithm just picked up on it and just went, right, that post isn't allowed. And then that can have knock-on effects. Their whole Facebook profile or Instagram account could be taken down. That could affect their ability to use the platform, use it for business purposes. So there are lots of issues. And I know that, this is slightly different to what he's discussed here, but on the advertiser side of things, in terms of getting ads approved and things like that, there are lots of mistakes made. And we've all seen, whether it's organic posts or ads, we've all seen examples of things that we weren't able to post, that were not allowed, potentially got our account in trouble. And then you go and have a look on the platform and you're like, hang on, how on earth has this person been able to post this when I wasn't allowed to post something that was far less extreme, wasn't controversial at all? So he's talked about previous content moderation systems not being good enough, and that's part of the reason, is he'd rather open it up and potentially there be more extreme stuff that does get published, but not have as many mistakes in terms of people not being able to talk about things that no one would really have a problem with, but just were accidentally being flagged. Okay, so I think, given my experience with the platform, that's certainly true, and it did need a change. It's just interesting that they decided to go this way with it. He's also talked about there being bias amongst the fact checkers previously and things like that. So that's all very interesting. So I want to run through the motivations because I think the weighting between those different motivations will have an impact on the effect. So if this is done to appease a new administration in the US, primarily a new government, well, this might be a bit of a token gesture. We might not see a huge amount of change. Okay, put yourself in Meta's shoes, right? You make all the right noises, you tweak a few things here and there, but otherwise, if that's how you want to carry on, how you have been doing for the last however long you want to carry on like that, you could probably more or less do that. We won't see a huge change. If this is more of a personality shift in Mark, he's more willing now to be like, we're going to do it this way. I think this is what's best, and I don't care what people say. Then it's likely to be much more significant. And I think that third point that I made in terms of the motivation for this change being their previous system wasn't very good, that also would indicate that this is likely to be a significant change, because I and most people in my audience would agree that a lot of their automated algorithms for detecting ads or content that aren't right or don't work very well and shouldn't be allowed, like that stuff's not great. Okay, so I think this is likely to be quite a significant shift in terms of how content is approached, and therefore the look, feel of the platform, user behavior on the platform. I think it might be reasonably significant. One of the most significant changes we've seen. What does this mean for advertisers specifically, which is clearly my audience, right? Mostly advertisers. I think there are big potential pros and cons. Now, I should say, we don't know what's going to happen, right? I could get this wrong. There could be things I haven't predicted, all sort of stuff. But I've got a lot of experience with the platform. I'm about as experienced as a Meta advertiser can get, given what I've spent, how long I've been doing this, built a large audience, a large agency in this space, etc., right? So I think I've got some good insight to share on what the potential pros and cons are for Meta advertisers. A big potential pro is that what happens on the organic content side of things, and that's what Mark Zuckerberg was talking about, that could easily also be applied to ads. Now, I still expect ad content to be more restricted than organic content, and I think it should be. I think that makes sense. But we have had very restrictive ad content for a number of years, far more restrictive than I would like it to be in many circumstances, far more restrictive than I think makes sense in many circumstances. So opening that up would be amazing and huge, particularly for those businesses that constantly get flagged, that operate in the health and fitness space or in the any sort of space that tries to help people improve their careers or make money or anything along those lines. Like, it's really, really difficult. And this is an example I've talked about before, but I want to give it again now, right? So one of Meta's ad policies when it comes to restrictive content is they say you can't make unrealistic claims. Now, on their example page within the Meta ad policies, one of their unrealistic claims, they literally give this as an example, is you can't claim to be teaching people something that shows them how to make at least $1,000 a month. And just like, hang on. So you're telling me that if in an ad I say, learn this thing and make at least $1,000 a month from it, that's an unrealistic claim? That's mental. Like, that's crazy. That doesn't make any sense. There are so many things you could teach someone where they could then realistically make more than $1,000 a month from it. Any sort of professional qualification. I mean, so you see what I mean? Like, loads of skills that would help you grow a business, loads of skills that would help you get a promotion at your job, that would help you make more than $1,000 a month, right? So that's a good example of where their restrictions on ad content are just way over the top. If that was $1 million a month, sure, fine, that's an unrealistic claim. $1,000 a month is most definitely not. So if advertisers are able to say stuff like that, I think that would be perfectly reasonable. And we see that on the unrealistic claim side of things, when you are advertising anything and you have examples of fantastic results, you want to be able to share those examples of fantastic results. And Meta often says, no, you can't say that, that's unrealistic. And you're like, but we actually did it. We have that with our own advertising. So we share amazing results that we're able to achieve with our Facebook and Instagram ad clients. And we have examples of like 60x ROAS, 80x return on ad spend, like crazy numbers. And often we can't actually advertise those. We have to advertise using the 5x, 6x ROAS examples because Meta's like, that's unrealistic. But like, it happened. You can see it in the ad account. If you want to, you can go and check and verify this. So I think if that content gets opened up, that would be amazing. What may also then come with that is that the bar for getting ad accounts disabled might be higher, which would also be great, because what will often happen is ads will be disapproved, sometimes incorrectly, often incorrectly. And if you get enough of those, you will then have your ad account disabled. So you can end up with a situation, this happens all the time, where advertisers haven't really done anything wrong. They haven't violated policies, or if they have, it's like they violated the one I just gave as an example, which is perfectly reasonable. I mean, imagine you're advertising a training qualification for a professional, something that's going to allow you to get a job that earns many times $1,000 a month. Like, it's just silly, right? So you have those ads disapproved, your ad account then gets taken down. If your ads are likely to be disapproved, that sort of sum total of disapprovement that then leads to an ad account ban would be harder to achieve, and we should hopefully see more advertisers not just get wiped out and taken down for no reason. That would be good. Again, this is speculation. One thing has to happen for then the other thing to have to happen, but I'd like to think this is the way things are going, which would be great. Okay, let's talk about some of the potential cons for Meta advertisers. So if the content on the platform becomes more extreme, perhaps more politicized, and there's people that obviously don't like that, then we may see users leave the platform. Now, that would obviously be not good for advertisers, because if there's less users, there's less ad inventory, there's less times to put ads, or maybe people don't leave, but they use the platform less. That would also be banned because less ad inventory, less people to potentially sell to. Like, we're advertisers, we want as many people on the platform as possible. If the advertiser numbers stay the same and there's less users, then there's more competition for less people. That will naturally drive up the price, right? More demand, less supply, drives up the price. So that could be a potential issue if we see. And I think we have a bit of a case study with this with X, because the content was opened up when Elon Musk bought the platform, and that does seem to have led to a drop in monthly users. However, assuming that the exact same thing will happen with Meta as it happened with X, I think is not correct, because the platforms are very different, and it's much, much easier for someone to decide to stop using X, formerly Twitter, than it is to decide to stop using Meta. Remember, Meta is, well, let's just say it's Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. There's also Threads, but like, imagine deciding tomorrow that you were never going to use any of those platforms. I'm sure there are some people watching this video that don't use them, although they might just use them for business purposes. But even as a personal user, right? Okay, maybe I could stop using Instagram, but like, could I stop using WhatsApp? Well, I got family WhatsApp groups and friends WhatsApp groups, and it's how I organize my six-side football team. And like, I can't, like, Facebook's how I organize another social hobby thing that I'm involved with, where that's how people talk, right? That would be really difficult to do for so many people. So are we going to see a mass exodus? I think it would be very unlikely, just because of how woven into everyday life those apps are, much more than X ever was. Aside from advertising, how many people do business? They buy things, they communicate with people, they reach out to people via WhatsApp, via Instagram DMs. Like, very, very difficult to do. We also know that in the comparison with X, a lot of advertisers stopped running ads. They sort of boycotted the platform, as it were. And Elon Musk has been very open a number of times about this, saying that it's silly and there's lots of impressions to be had and the ads are really cheap now and all that sort of stuff. Will that happen to Meta? I think that is also much less likely. So just like I think it's much harder for users to leave the Meta apps than it is for users to leave X, it's also the same for businesses and advertisers because of the things I just mentioned. I think all the outreach takes place via DMs. So many businesses do business on WhatsApp. They use WhatsApp as like the chat function within their business to be able to talk to existing customers and process returns and refunds and ask questions and stuff like that. So many businesses run ads on Meta, and that is one of the most important ways they acquire their customers. The idea of just walking away from that, very, very difficult to do. Much easier to do on a platform where that may not have been the case. I've interacted with thousands and thousands of businesses. Tons. Their primary and most important acquisition channel is Facebook and Instagram ads. Very few would say the same about X advertising. What you typically see is that most of the budget's going into Google ads, most of the budget's going into Meta ads, and then there's like a little bit available for X ads afterwards, because there's far fewer impressions, there's far fewer people on there, and therefore it's much easier to be like, yeah, that was only 5%, 10% of our budget anyway. Like, okay, we'll just say goodbye to it. Whereas doing that with Meta, so difficult. And what would your viable alternative be, right? You've got Google as a massive online ad platform, but it operates quite differently in a lot of ways to Meta. You've got TikTok, but TikTok always seems like it's a few months, 6 months off being banned in the US. There's always things coming up. Would you want your business wholly reliant on a platform that could disappear overnight? I know obviously there are lots of businesses advertising on TikTok, but to have that as your main core focus and replace what Meta ads is for a lot of businesses, very, very tricky. If we do see some advertisers leave though, I think the numbers are likely to be small. If we do see that, that's kind of great for those of us that are going to stick on the platform, because less competition means lower costs. So if that does happen, then that's not the end of the world at all. But like I said, I do think it's very unlikely. You're talking about people moving away from so much potential business and so much of marketing resource nowadays is focused towards Meta. Obviously, you've got the advertising side of things. You've got a lot of direct communication, a lot of cold outreach happens on Meta. When people talk about influencer marketing, they are mostly referring to Instagram typically, some Facebook. Obviously, there's YouTube in there as well. And there are other platforms, there's TikTok and stuff like that. But if I said like an influencer marketing campaign, the first platform most people are going to think about is Instagram. So you're walking away from all that as well. So there we go. I also think, and this is worth noting, that this is one of the advantages that comes with someone like Mark having so much control, is that let's say Meta does this. Well, they are going to do this. They're in the process of doing it in the US first. And it's not good. Like, the content's way too extreme. People are leaving in large numbers. Meta has the ability to course correct. And like, I absolutely think they would backtrack or tweak things or change them if they saw that these changes had a big negative impact. Like, I can't imagine they're just going to implement this, and if it does go bad, happily see 1 billion Meta users leave and just be like, whatever. Like, that is not going to happen. They will course correct. So if this does go bad, and I don't think it necessarily will in terms of user base, I think there's a good chance that it makes very little difference for the reasons I've discussed, in terms of who's on there, how long they're on there, all those sorts of things. It might change how the platform looks and feels a little bit, but from those things, I think there's likely to be a relatively small difference. But let's say I'm wrong and there is a big difference in the number of users. I'm pretty sure they're going to course correct and change that before it has a chance to do anything really damaging long term to the platform. Like I said, the bar to convincing someone to leave Meta altogether is high, very high. Particularly, like I said, with people how many people Like, how many of you watching this will use WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, Threads to communicate with people outside of any business purpose, just in your personal life on a regular basis? It's going to be, I imagine, the vast majority. So there are obviously a lot of unknowns at this point, and it is hard to say definitively. We will see what happens. I will certainly be paying very close attention to this, and I'll be keeping you updated on the impact that this does have. So make sure you subscribe for future videos on this. But I do think that overall, from an advertiser standpoint, I actually think this is more positive than it is negative. I think it's more likely to benefit advertisers than it is to hurt them, because I don't think the impact on the user base, which is what we really care about, is going to be very negative. But I do think the opening up of content, and then what's likely to come is an opening up of ad content, could be really, really beneficial and give us a lot more flexibility. Now, of course, this has been met with a huge amount of negativity. It was always going to. Mark could have said the complete opposite. He could have said, we're going to really tighten things up, and that would also have been met by a lot of negativity, probably from different people, but that would have been what people talked about. So that was always going to happen. That doesn't overly concern me. But yeah, we will see. Things always change very fast in this space. That creates fantastic opportunities, which is great. It also presents some difficulties, and we need to adapt and be able to change with it and find best practices under new setups and new paradigms. And those that do that get the best possible results. And if you want help navigating that as this changes, as the platform changes, and as there will continue to be lots of changes, then you might want to consider my mentorship program. So with my mentorship program, me and my team mentor you daily. We help you get the very best Facebook and Instagram advertising results. We do live calls all the time, multiple live calls per week with me and my team. We're in your ad account, we're auditing, we're giving you very specific feedback. You can ask us questions anytime that you want. It really is geared to be sort of have one of my $400 million Facebook ad team members in your business along with me to help provide advice and consult and things like that. There is a link in the description. You can click on that, come through to a page on our website. And one last stat on my mentorship program that I want to leave you with is that 82% of people that join my mentorship program see a notable improvement in their return on ad spend from their Facebook and Instagram ads within just 30 days of joining. So something I'm really proud of. It shows the mentorship program is doing what we wanted it to do and really, really helping advertisers take their business to the next level. So if you're interested, go ahead and click on that and go ahead and book a call, and hopefully we get a chance to work together. Thanks for watching the video. I'll see you in another one.